Are you enjoying yourself, Freddie?
Well, there's a vast network, right? An ocean of possibilities. I like dogs. I used to raise rabbits. I've always loved animals. Their nature, how they think. I have seen dogs reason their way out of problems. Watch them think through the trickiest situations. Do you have a couple of bucks I could borrow?
Apple has faced large amounts of criticism over the past calendar year, with most centering around its unveiling of their new AI software, Apple Intelligence. Most of the backlash has centered around its generative AI often being inaccurate. Millions of people that unknowingly opted into its usage via a software update were made aware of the inaccuracy problems when met with summaries of news articles, with one report falsely claiming that United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson's killer Luigi Mangione had committed suicide. Another prominent example was seen in the summary of a New York Times article, stating that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had been arrested. Outside of the reasonable outcries for Apple to correct their generative AI's problem with misinformation, there was little to no further complaint. Very quickly, the sentiment surrounding Apple Intelligence shifted, with Forbes.com publishing an article weeks after the misinformation dilemma, detailing the amazing features that Apple Intelligence offered that would certainly revolutionize the iPhone experience. A telling fact about the reception to the rollout of Apple Intelligence was that very little criticism was levied on Apple for generative AI serving to summarize everything from books to articles to text messages. The condensing of important information into bite-sized summaries is nothing new. Why would the largest tech company in the world receive criticism for something that everyone is doing, and something that is neither fresh nor groundbreaking? Maybe they ought to receive criticism. But why? Why criticize a corporate entity for bringing ease and accessible understanding to the hands of the masses? Having a world more capable of easily understanding the hard-to-digest issues, the complex details of minutia, the value of art makes us all better informed. Right? Is that right? Have we ever taken a moment to consider what the purpose of this ease is? Take a moment and think about it. What value is knowledge if it is not earned? What value is understanding if it is regurgitated? Are these questions we should be asking when we use generative AI? It would be ignorant to say that there are not times in which the ease of understanding from generative AI is not invaluable. If someone needs easy access to a formula to guide them along in their studies, no harm exists. If a person wants to know the last team outside the top 5 leagues to knock Real Madrid out of the Champions League, who suffers there? It was Ajax in 2019, by the way. Dusan Tadic and De Ligt, that was a crazy team. Same with Ten Hag. Really makes you think about what United does to a person. I might have to do a video on that. But what if someone asks for an analysis of No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy? Will they understand the meaning of his prose? Will they be able to craft a fluid perception of the story? Will they form a connection to McCarthy's sardonic humor? Can they even be able to see themselves in the characters and connect to their motivations? No, they will not. Instead, they will be enlightened to the aggregate of several scholars' opinion of the story. Some areas of consensus, some are left to debate, but either way, it's not an original opinion. And now, some may ask, what is lost in this? A person is guided to a basic understanding of a story while being saved the troubles of time that come in committing to reading the entirety of the story. What is lost is an appreciation for art, and just possibly a connection words cannot properly express. For most of my life, I've found myself hyperfixated on the meaning. In facts and books and art, it is easier to repeat someone else's understanding than create your own. However, I've come to believe this is a flawed way to function. An important concept that I believe supersedes all mediums of art and art analysis is the death of the author. In his 1967 essay, La Mort de l'Auteur, French literary essayist Roland Barthes outlines his concept of the death of the author, an idea that the author of any piece need not be analyzed for their interpretation or background in order to understand the meaning of a text, a sort of postmodern ideal that rejects the idea of an objective purpose or meaning to a piece that transcends personal understanding, and that an author ought, and more frequently does, create a piece in which the meaning is derived by the reader. Barthes outlines this concept perfectly in this excerpt from the essay. Once the author is gone, the claim to decipher a text becomes quite useless. To give an author to a text is to oppose upon that text a stop clause. This conception perfectly suits criticism, which can then take its major task, the discovery of the author, beneath the work. Once the author is discovered, the text is explained, the critic has conquered. However, in a multiple writing, indeed, everything is to be distinguished, but nothing deciphered. Structure can't be followed, threaded in all its recurrences and stages, but there is no underlying ground. The space of the writing is to be traversed, not penetrated. Thus, literature, by refusing to assign to the text a secret, that is, an ultimate meaning, liberates an activity which we might call counter-theological, properly revolutionary. The idea that the standard of criticism had harbored too much on an objective meaning, the idea that there is merit in each perspective derived from each consumer of art is something that deeply resonated with me. The death of the author pushes beyond traditional analyses of literature and ought to extend to all artistic mediums. This is not to say that there are not moments in which a creator's perspective is invalid, or that there is not an objective purpose behind the piece that holds merit in and of itself. It rather implies that there is value that exists in an onlooker's perspective, in an onlooker's values. It is in my eyes that the death of the author holds more value when a piece of art is resistant to objective interpretation. Allow me now to pivot towards the inspiration for this video, David Lynch's 2006 film, Inland Empire. The film is impossible to summarize. AI may be able to cobble together a loose plot summary or take pieces from interviews with actors or writers or even Lynch himself and tell you a picture of the story. An incomplete picture. A fragmented piece of a larger puzzle that requires multiple watch-throughs just to gather a preliminary idea of what the movie means. Inland Empire is a story within a story within a story. To give you a basic understanding, it details the dark side of Hollywood, Polish folklore, rabbits, affairs, murders, curses, and making a movie, and oddly enough, the film devotes equal time to each. Lynch immerses you in a plethora of worlds, creating semblances of familiarity with what is going on only to misdirect the viewer. It is all too common that a scene will jump from the midst of an affair in a dim apartment to a dialogue entirely in Polish amidst the snowy backdrop of which. The immediacy that each concept is introduced in is largely the end product of Lynch's creative process throughout the movie. The movie progressed into production without a formal screenplay. Oftentimes, Lynch would create scenes on the fly, drafting manuscripts with nothing but his head, and with no idea more than a general image of how it would coalesce into the broader story of the movie. In admitting this, it's possible that this contributed to a sense of confusion within the cast and amongst critics. The movie received mixed reviews, with most erring on the positive side. The highs of the reviews mostly applauded the cinematography, performances by lead actress Laura Dern and lead actor Justin Theroux, and Lynch's ability to capture a dreamlike reality with such creative nuance. However, a large source of criticism started to rear its head throughout the initial press tour. In a now infamous scene at the Venice Film Festival, lead actress Laura Dern was asked about her perception of the film. Lynch interrupts with a laugh before telling Dern to tell the truth. Dern admits she did not know who she played, and upon the film's completion, had no more understanding of her true role.
Tell the truth now.
Can I? You told me I could tell the truth. The truth is, I didn't know who I was playing, and I still don't know who I played.
At best, Lynch gave vague answers to explain important aspects of the story, and at worst, he remained mum.
Explain the presence of the three rabbits, particularly the one in pink doing the ironing.
No, I can't explain that.
Despite the critical reception mostly shading positive, it failed to stand amongst other movies released that year, such as The Devil Wears Prada, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Departed, with Inland Empire receiving no Academy Award nominations, winning 4 total awards from non-mainstream critics. It occurs fairly frequently that critical reception fails a movie, and some often slip through the limelight of mainstream awards. The way in which Inland Empire was failed by the media is indicative of a greater trend in modern film and art analysis. I feel the need to say that all 3 movies mentioned above are excellent films in their own right and deserve praise for the work of the actors, crew, writers, and directors. The reception of these previously outlined films were notably absent of one area of critique. No critic failed to understand the movie. Now, let's return to the point I established in the beginning. It is my belief that generative AI and its use in the field of artistic analysis furthers a pre-existing element of the human condition and something often rewarded in an information-centric culture such as our own. The need to understand everything. The extraction of the meaning. To diagnose why this is the case is a separate video. In my eyes, it's most likely a blend of capitalism, a degraded attention span, and the easy access to boundless entertainment, but it's impossible to do that topic justice without expounding on each of these causes more. Maybe another video for another day. I have a lot of video ideas. In the present, take a second to consider a piece of art from 2 different perspectives. Let's take a look at Picasso's 1903 piece, La Vie, or The Life. A 6x4 canvas housed in the Cleveland Museum of Art, the painting was one of the first from Picasso's Blue period. During this time, Picasso explored using sullen blues and dark tones, slowly beginning to indulge in the abstract scheme of art that would lead him to his later artistic revolution. Picasso completed La Vie shortly after his friend Carlos Casagemas committed suicide. This piece features the portrait of his friend in the center, being caressed by an anonymous woman, with the pair onlooking a mother holding her child. In the background are 2 canvases, both picturing similar silhouettes, painfully clinging on to shrapnel of life, devoid of form or expressed emotion. A broad interpretation of this piece has been painted from the involvement of a mother and child, juxtaposed with a woman and man, both sharing an embrace. With the scene taking place in a studio, the critical consensus is that the piece revolves around the idea of the mother as the first audience, with the mother imbuing a sense of enlightenment on the artistic pursuits of the child, unknowingly leading them to a cult of tradition in the broader world of art. However, the dark tones of the Blue period are all revolving around conflict. Most view the role of this enlightenment, the mother willingly allowing her child to enter the frays of the rat race that is the world of the artist, as the source of conflict. This in turn creates a detachment, both in the disillusionment from the art world and in the loss of a relationship with the mother. It is because of this that the critical world believes the piece is both a projection of Picasso's trauma from his suffering in the art world, the mourning of a relationship with his mother, as well as the grief over the loss of his dear friend. Now for a moment, ignore that. Consider the death of the author. Neglect the biographical portion and the critical reception and analysis, and try to formulate your own conception of the piece. Take your time. It's not that easy, right? Knowing everything you know now. You probably can't unsee Kasehimasa's face, or you can't unsee the role of the mother or the canvas in the background. Now let's try to analyze something else, but this time let's use a different order. Take a look at René Magritte's 1929 piece, The Menaced Assassin. Take a moment to look at the piece. Develop thoughts about the artistic style, the use of colors, any emotions evoked by the scene. Do you feel a connection to any of the characters envisioned in the painting? While it is not the most emotionally provocative piece, chances are you formed your own conception of it. The critical belief is that the piece was partially or largely inspired by the 1912 French silent crime series Fantômas. The piece is a loose interpretation from a scene depicted in the film. However, many have took the time to psychoanalyze the piece, believing inspiration was taken from the death of Magritte's mother. His mother committed suicide by drowning herself in a lake when Magritte was 12. Some believe the three onlookers are reflections of Magritte and his two siblings looking upon their dead mother on the couch, while the men dressed in black are not assassins, as the title would imply, but visitors looking on the dead in their funerary black. While knowing the inspiration and possible understandings of the piece, your connection to the art, your understanding, is not discredited by knowing this now. While now you know the inspiration and possible understandings of the piece, your connections to the art, your understanding, is not discredited by knowing this now that you took the time to form a connection first. So why do all this? Why Inland Empire? Why learn about the death of the author and bash generative AI? For the sake of ignorance. There is undoubtedly value in knowing what an artist or author intended. In plenty of circumstances, that is the case to understand the creator's point of view. However, I believe it's entirely possible to appreciate, validate, and know the circumstance behind art while still retaining that emotional connection that you have the capacity to form. So, how do you go about doing that? Well, there's one easy solution. Don't take shortcuts. Enter books, movies, and viewings of art blind. Appreciate what matters to you. Learn about what the artist was trying to convey. But don't let that distract you from your understanding and your connection. Don't let the voices of others who did not create the piece tell you what to believe. And sometimes, accept that ignorance can truly be bliss. Inland Empire awoke something in me. Try as I may, I cannot understand the story, and I do not wish to. Upon my first watch of the movie, I formed a connection to the story, to the characters, and to the idea of Inland Empire. That is a unique experience, and it is something rarely formed outside of the artistic world. I made this video not to rant or to bash the modern idea of criticism, but to encourage a more nuanced perspective of art, one that does not focus on solely understanding the piece in a robotic, analytical way. Instead, find a perspective that grips onto the death of the author, not seeking the meaning, seeking an emotional connection that is not confined to someone else's eyes. If you have 3 hours to throw around, watch Inland Empire. It truly is a fantastic movie. Or if you have 7 minutes, listen to Polish Poem by David Lynch and Christabel. It was a piece done for the movie and one that I think is incredibly beautiful and resonates with a lot of people. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to stick around, I will conclude this video by playing a song I don't understand and don't wish to, and showing a few pieces of art that formed a deep connection with me. If you have another minute to waste, I hope you stick around.